Some people run by distance, while others care more about how long they've actually been out. Who's wrong? Who's right? Does it even matter? What do you do? Well, we find out the answer to those questions and more on this special series called This or That with our guest host, Remy Be Real, on Trees in D-Lake.
Warm-up complete.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for coming back to a special series, something a little bit different on Remy Be Real, cross with my man D-Lakes. How you feeling, my dude?
I'm feeling good, chilling like a villain, sipping on penicillin. But I've been training and racing and doing pretty good, man. Doing pretty good. But we'll get into that in a second.
Hell yeah, love to hear it, love to see it. This is called This or That. There are no wrong answers, but know that you could either get with this
or you could get with that. You could get with this or you could get with that. We'll stop it there. In this episode today, we are talking about something that I like to take the contrarian view on, and that is, would you rather train on time or would you rather train on distance? And again, there is no right or wrong answer to it. Everyone has their own objective, like what are we working towards? What's the whole point of this? So then your why and your reason is going to be different. So Remy, what would you choose?
Man, if you're going to ask me time versus distance, it's going to be time. Always. And I'll tell you why.
You heard it. I definitely prefer to train by time. And the biggest reason being, it's just easier to structure the rest of your day. Because let's face it, we don't have all the time in the world as amateur athletes to dedicate to training. So it's nice to know that if I'm headed out, I'm gonna be out for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, however long it's gonna be, and I can plan my day backwards from there, knowing when I'll be done, when I can be expected to get back and get ready to move on to the next thing, whether that's work, school, childcare, you name it. Another important factor is knowing that 6 miles in the heat and humidity are not the same as 6 miles in the slush and snow. But when you're training by time, you can adjust to the conditions and adapt your training based off that. Lastly, your body has no concept of the distance, but it does understand time. It knows how exhausted you've been, it knows how long you've been out and how tired you're getting. So if you haven't met that distance, but you just keep pushing, you could risk hurting yourself and minimizing those training gains. And as a bonus tidbit for you, it's really cool to be able to measure your progress by seeing that, hey, in 60 minutes, I used to run 5 miles. Now in 60 minutes, I can run 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7 miles, and so on and so forth. And that's why I choose time over distance. What do you think, Darren?
So would I rather train by time or would I rather train by distance? And without a doubt, it's always going to be time for 2 reasons. 1, because the body doesn't know, and 2, because it's pro. Let me tell you more.
So number 1 is because your body doesn't understand distance. It doesn't know how far you're going. It only understands your heart rate and perceived rate of exertion and time. Let's say you want to do 3 by 7 minutes at a certain pace or a certain heart rate. It's much easier for your body to understand that. And it also makes sense in the context of knowing your lower limits and your upper limits. So if you want to make sure that, especially for me, for sub-threshold efforts, I want to make sure that my heart rate gets in a certain zone for a certain amount of time. And also, I need to get into that zone, because if it's below that, then I'm not actually going to get the benefits. And if it's above that, then I'm not going to get the benefits and I'm actually going to do more damage. So it's a combination of all those. And to my second point about being pro, it's pro AF. I think that we should do more of what the pros do. And what I mean by that is a lot of amateurs kind of race by feel, and they race by, what they think anecdotally should work. And that's not always the case. I'm not saying do everything the pros do, because some of the stuff they do, they can do because they've got massage therapists, they've got a whole team with them, they don't work full-time jobs, they don't have families. So don't do everything they do. Pros train on time, especially in the base season and, moving into more competition. And then they shift into distance, which we'll get into on the next part.
We did poll some of the audience, though, and some of the responses were actually a lot closer than I thought they would have been.
What's really interesting is we've got 46% time and 54% train on distance. That's way closer than I actually thought it would be. I thought most people out there train on distance, and that actually makes me feel better. I don't feel like such a contrarian, such a weirdo, even though I'm fine with being a weirdo. What is it? Being normal's weird. That's a saying. So yeah, some of the responses.
Ad break.
Right now is the part where I go, hey, if you're feeling this, make sure you like, subscribe, rate this, share it out with your friends about how amazing this is, right? All right, while you should go out and do that anyway, how about I actually give you something that will help you? Is the running, health, fitness, and endurance sport internet too much sometimes? Too much conflicting content on how to train right? Or you just don't have the time to read and watch the latest trends on how to, carb cycle for your next marathon. Don't worry, I'll take care of all that for you by showing you how to train, race, and live 1% better consistently. To do this, just sign up for my free D-Lake Runs newsletter. I figure out this whole 1% better thing so you don't have to by scouring the endurance sports internet's deepest and darkest corners. Go to DLakeCreates/news, spelled the normal way, NEWS, to be inspired and motivated on the regular. And back to the show.
When I was younger, I got caught up in the distance dilemma and got to run 70 miles a week. I've got to run 80 miles a week. Oh, the elites are doing 100 miles a week. I've got to run 100 miles a week. And I did a lot of junk just to hit the numbers. And it was really not until I started triathlon in about 1987 that I realized that all that was totally wrong. The heart only knows how long it's beat, how much it's beating, and for how long. So I switched everything on the head because I realized that a 5K swim is a long way and it takes a long time. A 5K bike ride is a waste of time in terms of a training session. So you can't compare distances between the sports. And that just got me thinking, why do we just do everything in time? It's so much more efficient. The body understands time. You've got the natural body clock, the rhythms, the cycle, everything else. And so I work with my athletes on, for example, they might be doing a 6-hour training week or a 10-hour training week. An elite guy preparing for Ironman might be doing a 20-hour training week. And we work on hours. And so, yes, I'm big into hours. There are certain times that you need to delve into the distance. If you're doing a 5K time trial, you can't say, hey, go and run 20 minutes. I say, look, go warm up, cool down. The whole session is going to take you about an hour, but do a 5K time trial in the middle, see where you get to. So sometimes you need to do distance, but as a general rule, it's time.
Here's Chan Wynn's take.
I think this is so interesting because 2 years ago, I trained by time for this race just because I was really new to it. And then I couldn't make the cutoff. So this past year, I found a coach and I asked him, hey, what do you prefer? And, he's like always like, well, it depends, it's mountain running. So technically time is really useful. But when it's cutoff, just because I can run for 12 hours doesn't necessarily mean I will make the cutoff. So this year we basically focused on the cutoff times. So I should be able to do, it was like, I think every 8 to 9 miles on average. So he would just put me on a terrain and, just train on that. And eventually I was able to make the cutoff times this year. It's just because we were just a little bit more focused on the distance between each cutoff. So maybe this is like a hybrid, the more I'm saying it is time, but a distance. But I guess because it's a race, it's just like, it was just so important that I had to be able to do the 50K. So this year, the same amount of time. Last year, it took me 11 hours, couldn't do it. This year, it took me 11 hours, but I was able to do the distance itself.
Here's Danny Jamie's take.
I train by distance because I find it just a lot easier to maintain and track volume. If I want to run a 7-mile run, all I've got to do is make a 7-mile loop, and I know wherever I want to stop, I'm going to stop right there. I like to look at a run and be like, I ran 7.00 miles. Perfect.
Here's Ava Ward's take. Catch them at Lord Warding Tony I on Instagram.
I would say time because I climb a lot of hills and those take a while, so I want to get credit for all my work.
Back to the poll results.
Better for trail running where same distance trail could take wildly different times. So that was Ellen. Widely went with time. And we got Picanti Pants 85, great name. More distance, the faster you get at shorter distance. So I'm going to guess he went with distance. And
but then PK Gra came in and said, just move to time. Best decision ever. And, you know, I think there's something to that, very dependent on the sport as well. So we do throw the broad spectrum of endurance sports out there, but I can definitely see that if you're planning a 10-mile race, you have to know that you can cover that 10 miles. But at the same time, if you're a triathlete or a swimmer, sometimes you just need to focus on the time because there is no way you are going to cover 70.3 in your training, right?
I mean, look, you can. For my Ironman training, I broke it up, and I didn't switch to distance until about 6 weeks out, and it was all just like swimming. I did exactly 3.8 Ks, which is whatever. I don't even know, 2.5 miles or whatever. And I remember being like, that's it. And then everyone's like, why don't you do 4,000, meters? And I'm like, nah, I don't need to. Cause swimming was just always like, swimming. But I wanted to make sure I could do 3.8 Ks. I had the Rocka shorts and I wanted, in a pool. And I was like, okay, in the ocean, you got salt water. I'll have a full wetsuit on. So I'll be even more buoyant. So it'll be even quote unquote easier. And on the bike, I did 5 hours. I knew I was going to be on the bike for anywhere from 5 to 5.5. And then I always, after the bike, I ended up always running off the bike, and I would run like 1.5 hours. 2 hours was like the biggest thing I did 4 weeks out. I did a swim. I did a 3.8K swim, which is the whole swim. I did a 5-hour bike, and then I did a 2-hour run off the bike. And that day, it was a 9-hour training day. And, it's like 80%, 85% of what I would do for the Ironman was a 10.5-hour Ironman. So it was distance, it was all distance that day. Well, the bike was 5 hours. I didn't care about that. But yeah, you do need to do distance. So that was the whole point of that rant was you do need to do distance at times, but I'd say the majority of your training, at least for me, should be time, and maybe you should try that. So try it. If you do distance all the time, try time. And like me, I do time all the time. And then, when I go over the distance, I'm like, this is different. This is cool. Right now I'm doing 1K intervals. I'm doing 500-meter intervals. So it's different. It's different, and it's a good change up. But you're still getting the work in. Your body doesn't know, either way.
Absolutely. And to that, I was swimming to time every time. And my coach was noticing that, I was starting to stagnate in my progression. And then he kind of unhinged and said, don't worry about the 45 minutes. Finish that 3,000. And it took a little bit longer. But then the next session, oh my goodness, my pace is getting a little bit better because I did go that, and then we're starting to up that a little bit more. And now I'm finding that, okay, now that I know, I just have to cover that distance. I don't want to be here all day, so let me start to pick it up. There's something, you can play some mind tricks if you know that I'm just out here for an hour. That time is going to go regardless of the effort you put in. But if you just know that I have to cover this distance, listen, I don't want to be here all day, so let's move it. But that's where we stand. That's the polls that we had. But the conversation is ongoing. Let us know down in the comments your take. Train by time, train by distance. We'll continue the conversation here. Until next time, y'all, it's been real. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you.
Peace.